Rayuta del Sol Spanish Immersion Early Learning Center had just opened for the day. Parents were dropping off their kids when eyewitnesses say federal immigration agents chased a woman who cares for infants inside the school, then forcibly took her out.
For someone to just take a preschool teacher who pours herself into these children is just not right.
Elected officials say the agent showed no warrant and ignored the teacher when she told them she had work papers.
They didn't just walk in chasing one person. They went into multiple rooms asking and looking for teachers while children were present. This is an agency that has gone rogue.
In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security said officers attempted to conduct a targeted traffic stop, but the male driver and female passenger ran into a daycare and attempted to barricade themselves inside. ICE said the teacher, Diana Galliano, entered the country illegally in 2023 and last month tried to smuggle in her children. Congressman Mike Quigley says Galliano has a work permit and legal documentation.
No parent should ever have to explain to their child why their teacher was dragged away by armed officers. And no teacher should fear that showing up to work to care for and educate kids could result in their arrest.
The community demanding the woman's release.
For this to be a reality of all the parents standing here is insane. It is surreal. It is a nightmare.
All of this occurred as a federal judge in Chicago is considering whether to put restrictions on certain tactics of immigration agents. And in this teachers' community, there is real worry, guys, about where these ICE agents may go next.
Understandable.
This is the book of Lamentations, chapter 4. In verse 17, it says, "As for us, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us." Verse 18, "They hunt our steps, that we cannot go in our streets. Our end is near, our days are fulfilled, our end is come." Verse 19, "Our persecutors are swifter than the eagles of heaven. They pursued us upon the mountains. They laid wait for us in the wilderness." All right, Shalom. I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Rakah Qudash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth. Shalom to the hopeful elect. I'm back with another quick lesson through the Holy Spirit of the Rakah Qudash. And jumping right into this article here from abcnews.go.com. The headline reads here, it says, "Federal agents deployed to Charlotte, North Carolina for immigration enforcement despite rejections from local leaders." It says the operation has been dubbed, quote, "Charlotte's Web," sources said. All right, so again, Esau is on the hunt for you Israelites, you so-called Negro, Latino, Native Americans, and Hispanics. And as we've been seeing as of lately, he's deploying troops all over America. Okay, because right now we're in the midst of martial law, a police state that's happening, man. Okay, so he's hitting all the major cities across the U.S. to come after Jake. This video here, this is from MS Now. DHS launches Operation Charlotte's Web in North Carolina despite protests from local officials.
In Trump's extreme immigration crackdown, the Department of Homeland Security officially announcing its latest operation in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they are calling it Operation Charlotte's Web. MS Now just received this statement from DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin, reading in part, quote, "We are surging DHS law enforcement to Charlotte to ensure Americans are safe and public safety threats are removed." Joining us now is Pulitzer Prize-winning staff writer for The Atlantic, Caitlin Dickerson. Also with us is MS Now contributor and friend of the show, Paula Ramos. She's the author of Defectors, The Rise of the Latino Far Right and What It Means for America. Caitlin, it's great to have you here on the show. I'm going to start with you and begin with your reaction to Operation Charlotte's Web. Bovino, I guess, leaving Chicago, now turning his sights to North Carolina.
My reaction is that the administration, it seems to be having a lot of fun with this. They're not slowing down at all. And, they've already deported more than 500,000 people. That's a huge number. And they've promised that those numbers are only going to increase. They're only going to accelerate more. At the same time that we're seeing so many troubling aspects of this crackdown. I mean, not just deportations that the public thinks have gone too far and that they're targeting people who've lived in the United States for years or decades, who have American-born children, but also U.S. citizens being swept up. The governor in North Carolina suggested that the public look out for inappropriate behavior by CBP and film if that happens. But the reality is that could get you pepper sprayed at this point, right? That's what's happening simply to people who are trying to hold the agency accountable. So I think it makes sense that Charlotte, the community there, is really worried that people are hunkering down and full of fear. I think as they should be, based on what we've seen so far.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Charlotte is a blue city in a red state, which is very consistent with this administration in the way that it is going after blue cities, Democratic cities, Portland, LA, Chicago, and now Charlotte. Even when they
Yeah, so it's going down in Charlotte, North Carolina, right? And real quick, and Shalaki about the drag on the video. All right, computer was moving a little slow, but let me grab this too. All right, this is Psalms 10:7. It says, his mouth is full of cursing and deceit and fraud. Under his tongue is mischief and vanity. Verse 8, it says, he sitteth in the lurking places of the villages. In the secret places do he murder the innocent. His eyes are privily set against the poor, which the poor represents you Israelites. Okay? Those that can't defend themselves. Okay? And this is who they're coming after. All right? So and we saw a few videos, at camp. I don't remember seeing any, but I know a few videos that I had watched. They were they were in these remote locations, basically hiding out, and they were jumping out on on some Northern Kingdom Jakes. There's a couple of videos that went viral. All right. But this is exactly what they're doing. All right. He sitteth in the lurking places of the villages. In the secret places do he murder the innocent. His eyes are privily set against the poor. Right. Verse 9. It says he lieth in wait secretly as a lion in his den. See? And this is what they're doing. It says he lieth in wait to catch the poor. He doeth catch the poor when he draweth him into his net. Yeah, these various traps. Okay? It says, verse 10, he croucheth and humbleth himself that the poor may fall by his strong ones, which is going into them to those troops, man. Okay? So this is what he's doing. He's taking advantage of the poor. All right, he's coming after Jake. All right? And they're not sparing nobody. It doesn't matter if you have proof that you're a so-called American citizen. If they pull up on you, it's pretty much you're done for. That's what all the videos have been showing. They don't care. Snatching people out of cars, out of stores. All right? Hey, this is the devil that the Bible speaks of,
deployed the National Guard. It was to D.C. and Memphis in red states. I mean, obviously Tennessee, red state, but same with North Carolina. It's a red state, but they're going after the blue city.
Exactly. I mean, it's the formula we already know. It's a Democratic stronghold. Remember that in 2012 they had the National Convention.
Yeah.
Huge black and brown population. Over 150,000 people just in Charlotte are foreign-born. But I think the question then is, to your point, so what does this next iteration look like?
Huge black and brown population. There's you Israelites, there's you Jakes. It's all about Israel, man. All right? This is all tied into Jacob's trouble.
What does it mean to escalate, given everything we know, given everything we've seen in Chicago, in LA, in Portland? What does the breaking point look like? But then there's the other side of the story, which you do so well in your reporting, which is this is just a distraction, right? Immigration enforcement has been going on in North Carolina since the beginning, right? What the numbers show you is that since Donald Trump was in office, immigration arrests in North Carolina have increased by 162%, right? They've more than doubled since January. What that also shows you is that the story isn't just these massive ICE raids, it's the way in which this immigration machine is quietly already operating. Most of these arrests that are taking place in North Carolina are happening this way, which is these partnerships between local law enforcement and ICE agents. And so the story isn't what we're used to talking about. It's not what the cell phones are capturing. It's the way in which this quiet machine is operating in a very effective and efficient way.
Well, Caitlin, that's in your searing story, which you start out, in a Virginia courtroom and talking about almost just how normal this has gotten and how quick and swift, and a Virginia father who was upset that he would be deported and have to leave his 5-year-old son, and you struggle to locate him over the course of your reporting. But you point out that the viral incidents actually aren't exceptions. That's the norm, which is so scary. So let's talk about that story.
Sure. Yeah. Paola said it exactly right when she said that what's happening right now is very quiet. So it looks loud, right? There's this chaos and these clashes that are happening in the streets, but the very efficient movement of people through these courts without legal representation, without access to their family members who can present evidence before the court to try to help them fight, all of that is happening very far from public view. Some of it.
Yeah, these are those these are those deputized militia groups, man. And they're strategically hunting Jake down. This is why we read the Lamentations 4. They hunt our steps that we cannot go on our streets, This is Psalm 140:4. It says, "Keep me, O Lord, Yahweh Shemel Shai, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from the violent men who have proposed to overthrow my goings." Verse 5, "The proud have hid a snare for me," right? The traps. "And cords, they have spread a net by the wayside. They have set gins for me, Salah." So this is what these damn devils are doing, man. Okay? They're not authorized. These are those militia groups, man. Okay? These far right wingers, that have been given that power, to have their way. Okay? So they're just hopping out, snatching Jake up in broad daylight. Okay, and this is the norm, as they were talking about. Hey, this is the norm all over these major cities right now, man. Because remember, Trump has given these devils that green light, man. Isaiah 10:5, I always bring that out, how the Assyrian was given the charge, to tread Jake down like the mire in the streets. So this is happening. Okay?
Through these partnerships with police that Paola mentioned, also in these massive detention facilities. Most people right now are being housed in places like Georgia and Louisiana and Texas, places where there is no press, where there are no protests, and where people don't really have access to due process right now. So I sat in that Virginia courtroom because I wanted to just kind of get a sense of what a day in this world and Trump's immigration crackdown looks like. And I saw case after case of the kind that has gone viral, people who've become household names. Those types of stories were almost a dime a dozen in this court. But we were not hearing about them because, remember, on top of everything that we've mentioned, this crackdown is targeting people who don't feel comfortable, in many cases, broadcasting their stories, who have fear, who maybe have other family members who are worried about being swept up. And so the reality is that this crackdown is moving so quickly, it's just impossible for us to keep up and to really grapple with the full scope of it in this moment.
Paola, the thing that I keep coming back to that we've talked about pretty much every time we've had you on the show is that even in the viral moments that have been captured that are horrifying, like, for example, the case in Chicago where a man says that he and his 1-year-old child were pepper sprayed, just horrifying footage of this little child crying because they've been basically the victim of state-sanctioned child abuse. Even when those things do come in public view, unlike all of these invisible cases, there still isn't the same overwhelming public rejection of these events. When the child separation policy happened, and I know you covered that exhaustively in the first administration, it was among the most unpopular things that had ever been polled on in the history of polling of all major policies. There was this massive unified public outcry that Americans were unwilling to tolerate this, again, effective state-sanctioned child abuse of children, even if they were foreigners. That maybe Americans had some reservations about having the foreigners invading our country. and somehow we're past it. I don't know how to reconcile that moment in American history with the one that we have now.
So the last time we talked, Antonia said something along the lines of, will Americans forget? No, where does the memory go? I've been thinking about it. I think perhaps Americans will forget, but the people that will not forget are the young Latinos like that kid that will grow up. And I think we're about to see a very similar pattern that we saw during Joe Arpaio's era in Arizona, where there was this generation of young Latinos that are carrying this intergenerational trauma based literally on the images that we're seeing now, that have seen their parents being criminalized, that have felt it during Trump's first administration. They're feeling it now again. 5-10 years from now, those are the Latinos that will then turn that rage and that anger and that trauma into political power, because those were the Latinos in Arizona that were responsible for turning that state from a purple state into, from a red state into a purple state. And so they will be the ones that will not forget.
But what about the we're all human. Like, I don't understand how people can watch this footage.
Well, you have to remember that, you know.
Yeah, she's talking about we all human, but them Edomites don't feel like that. And this is what you Jakes are finding out. All right? You weren't part of the program. You weren't part of making America great again, man. Okay? You don't matter. All right? And see, this is what our people are seeing now. All of them. All right? All you so-called Negro, Latino, Native Americans, and Hispanics. Now you're seeing the reality of what it is in America, man. And how these Edomites really feel. You know?
They're watching. There's actually sort of a battle, a sort of image and an aesthetic battle happening in the immigration sphere as well. So while we have governors like J.B. Pritzker saying, please take out your phones, record what's happening, ICE is going out with cameramen, making content.
Yes.
DHS is putting out propaganda with
joke when I first
filters.
saw it.
And so there are two stories of this. And, you know, there are Americans who are rightfully outraged by what we just showed on our screen, a baby
and some
crying from, yes, and it's relishing it. They believe they're engaged in some kind of holy war. Caitlin, I mean, both of you have covered this for so long, but have you ever seen the federal government send out its own reality TV production force alongside the rest of the immigration apparatus?
In my lifetime, no, but there's definitely precedent for propaganda, very heavily racially coded propaganda to support efforts like the one that we're in right now. I mean, I think a couple of things about both of your questions. One thing to keep in mind with family separations, as someone who covered that from the very beginning, and by the way, you did too, it took a while. It took a while for the public to actually wrap their minds around what was happening, because in the beginning it was confusing. Even though I was writing in the New York Times very specifically, you know, people's photographs and their names and their stories saying that they had their children taken away from them, for many months the administration said that was untrue. And so it took time for the public to really believe and see the volume of what was happening. And I also think there are a lot of misconceptions that are coming to a head right now. I actually got a really helpful email from a reader yesterday who was asking me, you know, Caitlin, if all these people in your story have been in the United States for as long as you say they have, why didn't they just become citizens? Like, if they really want to contribute so much to this country, why don't they do that and pay taxes? What this person didn't realize, and what a lot of people don't realize right now, is that there is no legal way to do that. I mean, these are folks being targeted right now who've been waiting since the George W. Bush administration. Every president since then has considered legislation, except for Trump, to give them a pathway to legal status, but it hasn't come. And so I think there are lots of questions, you know, why aren't these folks contributing when in fact they are? Undocumented immigrants contribute billions of dollars in taxes every year.
Yeah, so you get the point, man. All right, this is the time we in. All right, Charlotte, North Carolina is turning up, as you see. And I had I saw this precept in my sword for Psalm 10 and Psalms 10 and 9, right? I read it again here. It says, he lieth and waits secretly as a lion in his den. He lieth in wait to catch the poor, right? He doeth catch the poor when he draweth him into his net, right? So it had Micah 7 and 2, right? Let's pull that up. Micah 7 and 2. I'll read down to 3. All right. We'll start at 1 here. Micah 7:1, it says, "Woe is me, for I am as when they have gathered the summer fruits, as grape gleanings of the vintage. There is no cluster to eat. My soul desired the first ripe fruit." Verse 2, it says, "The good man is perished out of the earth, and there is none upright among men. They all lie in wait for blood. They hunt every man his brother with a net." Verse 3, "That they may do evil with both hands earnestly. The prince asketh, and the judge asketh for a reward. And the great man, he uttereth his mischievous desire. So they wrap it up. Now, I was just looking this up in the chat, right? To get some context and clarity, right? So it goes into Micah 7:1. It says, Micah compares himself to someone who arrives at a vineyard or orchard after the harvest is over, finding no fruit left. Fruit here symbolizes righteous people, faithful leadership, godly behavior, and justice. It says he is mourning because there is no evidence of righteousness left in the nation, just like a field stripped bare, right? And it says the metaphor echoes Isaiah 5:1-7, Hosea 9 and 10. It says, so he is saying, I am looking for a righteous people of justice, but I can't find any. The nation is spiritually empty, right? Verse 2, total corruption. Michael goes deeper. It says, the good man, quote unquote, godly, honest person has vanished. The quote upright, those who stand for righteousness are gone. People are living in violence, deceit, and betrayal, even against their own brothers, right? It says they hunt every man his brother with the net, means people are trapping, deceiving, and using one another for gain, like predators, not neighbors. And what's heavy is that even in these ICE agencies or whatever, these in these groups, you know, you got Jake that's working for ICE, okay, that's snatching up his own brother. All right, we've seen the videos, man. You know, you got Judites, you got some Northern Kingdom Jakes up in there. All right, so they're doing the work. They're doing the work of the devil, right? It says this reflects the same spiritual decline described in Psalms 12:1, Isaiah 59:3-7, Jeremiah 5:1, right? So I thought that was pretty heavy, right? Yeah, that's the point, man. So yeah, man, it's just, you know, it's basically, you know, hunting season for Jake, man, on Jake, right? So this is what's going on. The latest news out here in Charlotte, North Carolina, man, right? So hey, this thing just continues to turn up. Shalom.